Okay, we got our last video. We're going to do factor by grouping with some solving in it. So with factor by grouping, you're always looking for 4 or more terms. So 1, 2, 3, 4 terms here. The first thing we want to do with factor by grouping is the grouping part. So let's group the first 2 terms together, and then let's group the last 2 terms together. So that's the grouping part. Now you got to do the factor part. So the first thing we're thinking about is in this first parenthesis in red, what's the greatest common factor between x to the third and 4x squared? The greatest common factor is x squared, because if you think about it, this is x times x times x, that makes an x cubed, and then we have negative 4x times x in the second one. So both terms have an x to the power of 2 in common. So let's take out an x squared. When we do that, when we take out our 2 x squareds from both terms, the first term we have an x left, the second term we have a minus 4 left. And then when we look at our purple, we don't have any x's that they share, but we have a 9 and a 36. What do both 9 and 36 have in common? Well, a positive 9. So when we take our first term and divide it by 9, we get an x. When we take our second term and divide it by 9, negative 36 divided by 9 is a negative 4. So notice when you did your factor by grouping, if you've done your GCFs correctly, your parentheses will always match. So we have x minus 4 for both parentheses. That is by design. So this x minus 4, that's like a factor because they both share it in common. So that gets to come out front as a single x minus 4. And then your GCFs get the second parenthesis, x squared plus 9. All right, and now we ask ourselves, can I continue? Is there more I can do in terms of factoring? So the x minus 4, nothing else you can do. It's just an x minus 4. You can start solving that right away. But the x squared plus 9, well, let's think about our factoring forms. We see 2 terms, so 2 terms is either sum and difference of squares or sum and difference of cubes. So x squared and 9 are both perfect squares. So we can actually factor that further. So it's like a squared plus b squared. We know that factors into a plus bi and a minus bi. So what we're going to do here is set a squared equal to x squared and do a little mini solving, and b squared equal to 9 and do some solving. So when I square root both sides, because that's what gets rid of a squared, we know that a is going to equal x here. When I square root the second equation, b squared and 9, we know that b will equal 3. So we can go back to our equation here, and a always goes first, so x is going to go first, and then we have our plus and minus, and then our b always goes second, so 3 and 3. And again, because this was adding 2 perfect squares, we have to make sure that our b gets an I on it, so I and I. And then let's bring down that x minus 4, because we didn't do anything with it, so it just comes along for the ride. So if problem was just asking you to factor by grouping, this would be your final answer. But this one is saying with solving. So with solving means you set your equation equal to 0 and you keep going. So here, each factor gets set equal to 0 and you solve. So the x minus 4 gets set equal to 0. The x plus 3i gets set equal to 0. And the x minus 3i gets set equal to 0. And now again, you're solving these 3 mini equations. So the first one, to isolate x, we're going to add 4 to both sides. and you get x equals 4. The second equation, you're going to subtract 3i over to the other side, and you get x equals negative 3i. The green equation, you're going to add 3i to both sides, and you're going to get x equals positive 3i. So those are your three answers. Notice a couple things. When we were talking about these in our notes, your fundamental theorem of algebra always says that your number of roots always matches your highest degree. So notice it does. We have 3 answers and our highest degree was 3. And then chances are it's going to also ask you what types of roots or solutions are these. We know x equals 4 is a real number. So we have one real solution. And then the negative 3i and positive 3i, those are imaginary numbers. So we have 2 imaginary solutions. All right, friends, that's all for this video. See you later.